The immigration minister has authorized over 800,000 foreign students to work full time. Do you think that's cheap labor for the big stores?
Well, yeah, it's kind of, what the immigration system is. It's broken, right? It's flooding our societies with cheap labor to artificially boost our GDP, to make our numbers look slightly better. And also they feel like if they give, caveats to a lot of these foreign students and foreign and fast track them to citizenship, they think they're building up a voter base and a voter bloc. And yeah, okay, it might be clever electoral strategy, but it's gonna backfire on society. Like that's not good for society to turn new immigrants into a voting bloc, because that's going to breed resentment. It is. It just absolutely is. If you're giving, well, Canadians are struggling. If you're giving new immigrants privileges, it's going to backfire and build division. So, to me, that is a means of flooding the market with cheap labor. And the irony is they're supposed to be the working class party for the people, and against the corporate elites. But this is something that ultra rich billionaires benefit from and society doesn't benefit from. And not to say that conservatives haven't done it, Republicans haven't done it, right wing governments haven't done the same thing, but everyone does this. And it's maybe an offshoot of us unable to have some tough conversations on sensitive topics about how to properly run an immigration system, because no reasonable Canadian wants zero immigrants. The country would collapse, right? The country will collapse at zero immigrants. The number isn't zero, right? But the number isn't a million per year. That's way too much. Like we're a country of now 40 million people. Like you can't bring in a million to 40 million a year. Like that's way too high. You can't integrate. You don't have the services to it. Like that's too much. But what's the number? We fundamentally are unable to have this conversation because the Trudeau government is under the thing. They push the immigration is good because it's sort of a left-wing social justice type thing, right? The thing is like Republicans, conservatives, they hate immigrants because they're racist. We love immigrants because we're non-racist. Immigration is a good thing. So it's sort of like, if you ever saw the My Big Fat Greek Wedding where the dad thinks Windex fixes everything. This is how the liberals look at immigration. Immigration is a good. So, healthcare, just throw some immigration on that. Oh, the economy's bad, throw some immigration on that. And that's not how it works. Immigration is a function of economics. Depending on certain situations in your country, there's a right amount of immigration. Like there's a sweet spot here. And we just have no will to find the sweet spot. We have people screaming, right? Everyone's too afraid. Like the major establishment is just in this whole immigration is a good thing, right? And then it's basically just the PPC taking the opposite thing, where the PPC is not talking about, okay, we need a reasonable immigration strategy. We need to do this, this, and this. Like I'm with them on ending mass migration, but they've gone the opposite way. They're just like, no, immigration is a bad thing. And you're like, okay, now we're equally unserious as the liberals here, right? We can't have the conversation of like immigration is not good or bad. It's a factor of economics. What's the right number? We can't have this conversation, right? We just have you have to say immigration is good or else you're a racist and you'll be attacked by the media. And you're not a true conservative unless you're screaming about immigration being bad. And there's very few people willing to have the adult conversation. And that's 10 years of Trudeau.
What are the consequences for Canadians?
Of a bad immigration policy? Well, like
Yeah.
housing crisis, right? You see Canadian home, like I know a lot of comedians and I've done comedy, and like if you're a road comic, you stay in different hotels, and I've stayed in hotels. A lot of the hotels in our country are refugee camps. So that's one of the consequences. Hotels are filled with refugees. Our homeless shelters filled with refugees, homeless people on the streets. And it's starting to affect the people in the lowest rung, right? So to an extent, like the PPC is right. If you end mass migration, you're going to help the housing crisis, but it's not a silver bullet thing, right? The housing crisis, regulations on building houses, like it's a supply and demand problem, right? The conservatives are trying to focus on the demand, and the PPC are focused on the supply. And answer is you kind of need both. But if you have uncontrolled migration into a country like Canada with really high taxes and stupid regulations, okay? We are not Texas, okay? Texas can handle like a lot of illegal immigration and a lot of immigration because the building codes are, it's a thing, but like it's easy to build in Texas. If you're a developer in Texas, it's easy to like buy land. You buy the land, it's yours. You want to build something on the land you own, you build it. You want to sell it, you can sell it. So the more people come to Texas, they have the demand increases, but they also have mechanisms to increase supply. So it's better. That's not how it runs in Canada. Like you want to build anything in Canada, you want to do anything in Canada, you have to be connected to the government, you have to do paperwork, you have to bribe the unions, you have to get in you have to jump through 8,000 different hoops, you then have to bring the government in. So we can't really build and a way to compensate for all of this. So the major factor that people are focusing on is like, okay, yeah, the housing bubble is going to be insane. And, then there's the social cost. You bring about too many immigrants to a country, they don't assimilate. They're going to be blocking bridges and screaming about the Jews. I mean, let's face reality. Every major polling company from all sides of the political spectrum over the last 30 years, all polls conducted in Muslim majority Arab countries, over 90% of them have deeply anti-Semitic conspiratorial views. They hate Jews. 90% of them, over 90%. You import these people with no vetting, 90% of them are going to be anti-Semites. And it's going to cause friction, right? They're going to go into the Jewish community and harass and attack them when Israel and Palestine are having a tizzy, and it's going to break down social cohesion, right? You don't control the people coming in from the Punjab region. They end up in Khalistani gangs. What are they going to do? Harass Hindu temples, recreate like we have a country that celebrates the Indira Gandhi assassination, right? These are now you have two communities, like the Khalistanis and the Hindus, who just they can't function together, and degrading the social fabric. So if you don't properly integrate people, all the problems from that part of the world are come back here. Like Ethiopia might be set for another war. What happens when the East African communities are at each other's throats because none of them feel more Canadian than they do from Ethiopia or Eritrea or the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Like, what happens? What happens when there's unrest? And, like, if you don't properly integrate your society into something that is Canadian here, then anytime there's conflict somewhere else in the world, it's gonna show up here. And those are the consequences. Like, poor social cohesion. If you have people who don't love the country, there's people who don't come for our values. There's people who come to just live off the system and the welfare and the benefits. And that sucks money out of Canadians' tax dollars. People see that, they get angry, rightfully so. And, then they feel like their concerns aren't met because they're called racist, this, that, phobic. And, it leads to people, going insane.